Ever since I was a kid, I have always loved Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man has consistently been my favorite hero all the way from my childhood to my current adult life. And Spider-Man stories are always at their best and most inspiring to me when they are ones of the double life struggle of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and particularly how that affects his personal relationships and the things he has to sacrifice in order to still be the hero that he knows he needs to be. We've seen this in pretty much every Spider-Man medium in the films and TV shows, and it's something that is always pushed, and it's kind of a recurring theme, to the point that it has kind of become a little overbearing, some would say. But it's what I really love about Spider-Man. And after finishing Spider-Man 2 recently, I didn't get that from this game as much as I thought I was, especially because the first game really hammered home a lot of those points, especially in the back half, with fighting Doc Ock, Peter having to sacrifice May in order to save the whole city. Like, that was real, that was good Spider-Man stuff. Same thing with Spider-Man Miles Morales, where we saw Miles struggling to reconcile his relationship with his friend Finn, and ultimately she dies as well. Spider-Man 2 doesn't fully do a lot of those traditional Spider-Man stories. It tries in a lot of ways and gets almost there and just kind of falls flat at the end for me personally. So in this video, I want to talk about the things that Spider-Man 2 does really well, because it does 98% of all of the things it's trying to do really well, but it doesn't do that 2% well, which is landing a lot of the emotional story beats that I was really hoping it would, and because of that, I felt disappointed after finishing playing. And just for the record, this video will have spoilers for Spider-Man 2, but they'll be marked in the description with the timestamp and the timestamp of the video. So with that said, let's talk about what the game does really well first and what I really enjoyed, and before we get into more spoilery story issues that I had. So I'm going to start with the things that this game does really well, because man, it does just so much so well. To the point that I think people are actually overlooking some of the missed story beats towards the end, but we'll get there eventually. So starting off on more of a technical side, it's absolutely insane how much technological magic that Insomniac was able to pour into this game, because you have just so much happening on screen in these massive, incredible action set pieces that the first game, even Miles Morales, probably could not have done, and they really are harnessing the power of the PS5. It's absolutely mental. Not only do you have a million things happening on screen during these huge set pieces, but you can fly and swing from one end of the city to the other without any loading screens, which, you know, a lot of games can't even do that. Starfield. But when you do fast travel and when you do have a loading screen per se, it's basically non-existent. Like, it's within like 1, maybe 2 seconds. Like, just look at this. It's absolutely insane. Like, I don't understand how this was done, and it's genuinely impressive. And on the technical side alone, this game deserves all of that praise. It really is such a massive improvement on the first 2 games, and especially on the first Spider-Man game. Now, you might be thinking, I don't know, it feels kind of the same as I remember the first game playing. No, listen, I replayed Spider-Man 2018 recently, okay? Great game. Absolutely love it, but going from that pretty immediately into Spider-Man 2, the feeling of web swinging, the speed you have, all the abilities you have to kind of chain swinging, and now with the web wings, all that together, the movement is absolutely insane. And your mind kind of can trick you and be like, oh, this is exactly what it felt like in the first game. It's not. Like, in one swing in Spider-Man 2, you can go where it would probably take you like 3 to 5 swings in the first game. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's pretty close to how it feels. Because, hey, it does make you feel like Spider-Man once again, even more. And I absolutely loved the addition of the web wings, actually. Even though a lot of people don't like that and they think that it kind of takes away from the web swinging, I don't know. I found myself having more of a balance between swinging and web gliding, depending on where I was in the city, trying not to rely on one or the other too much and utilizing both, because that's kind of what the developers, I think, wanted you to do. But more on the additions in this game, the action is just so much more fluid, and especially in comparison to the first game. Between Spider-Man 2018 and the Miles Morales spinoff, they really nailed down the fluidity of combat and chaining combos and abilities. And in this game, they do it even more, because now both Peter and Miles have their respective abilities. Miles being his, venom punches and all that, and Peter's being both stuff with the symbiote. And then also just stuff with this kind of web gadget tech. It just feels way better to play. You can do a lot more combo-wise. There's less stealth, which some people might not like. But you don't have to stealth, really. You can just mow through enemies. Some of the web gadgets, there's less of them, but the ones that are in the game now are just really overpowered, honestly. Especially the little web grabber. You can take out half of a room just using that, and it's great. We love to see it. Another thing that I really love that was a huge improvement from the first game, especially because I love Souls-like stuff, is the boss fights. The boss fights this time around they usually have about 3 or 4 phases per boss fight. It's awesome, and you can actually see the boss's health bar, and you can see like the little phases. It's not just relying on gimmicks of like hitting the enemies with certain objects. It's not necessarily any of that. It's you're actually fighting them, and you're having to dodge, and you're having to parry, which they added a parry in this game, which I, again, loved because I'm used to Souls games. In the open world combat, you didn't really utilize all of the dodges or parries or all the specific timings, but in these boss fights, I really found myself having to nail down the boss's attack patterns and dodge and parry at like certain times, especially in the boss fights in the second half of the game, which was something I did not expect at all. Like the final boss fight in particular, not going to go into spoilers right now, but it took me like a long time, way longer than I expected, and I died a lot. But the implementation of these boss fights was easily one of the biggest highlights of my experience with the game. Another thing this game does really, really well, better than both the first 2 games combined, I think, is the characters. All the voice actors are just putting their heart and soul into these characters, particularly, Yuri Lowenthal as Peter, and whoever voices MJ. Man, MJ in particular was so good this game, man. I absolutely loved her characterization and the relationship between her and Peter and how it influences a lot of things in the game, like in a good way, and being such a core part of a lot of the story. It was so well done. Mary Jane was also such a beast in this game. She was so cool. And like really like standing up for herself and calling out Peter when he needs to be called out, and even like helping Miles with things. It was just really cool to see, and I really enjoyed this take on Mary Jane this time around. Also, of course, Miles Morales was phenomenal. Like a lot of the times I liked him better than Peter in this game, just because of a lot of story stuff that I discussed in the spoiler section. But Miles was phenomenal. His voice actor too, I don't know who it is, but absolutely killing it. Something it also did really cool with the characters is it brought so many other characters back from the first game and expanded on their storylines. Like there was stuff with Black Cat and like the DLC that I only recently just played from the first game that I'm so glad I did, and other stuff with Yuri, like the police captain, and a lot of the story beats that were kind of left up in the air sort of in the DLC and the other game that they really picked up in really natural ways here, which I wasn't expecting, because a lot of times from sequels some of that doesn't happen, but they did a really good job of picking up in a natural way all these threads of side stories and all the side quests, because the side quests in this game I often loved more than some of the main content. In particular, some of the like Spider Friend app thing, like there was a couple missions that I just were in tears over because they're just so wholesome. There's a phenomenal mission with Howard, who was in the first game. You had to collect all his pigeons for him. And if you haven't done that mission and you've been playing this game, please go do it. It was genuinely probably one of my favorite missions in this whole game, honestly. And it was really simple. And the city just felt so much more alive because you had all these experiences with these side characters and all these citizens of the city. And that was really cool. That was something I think the first game and even Miles a bit was missing, but definitely the first game. So that was one of my favorite parts of the game this time around. So with all of that said, the things that did not work for me. Now there's going to be a spoiler section here, but not yet. I'm just going to talk vaguely about the story. Before going into the game, a lot of people were saying, a lot of the reviews were saying that the first half of the game was slower and the second half of the game really kicked things off and they liked better. Now, I halfway agree with that. I think the first half of the game is definitely slower and the second half is faster, more intense, but I did not like the second half as much. The first half of the game is what you see from a lot of the trailers. You see Kraven, the hunter. He's coming into New York. He's trying to hunt down all your old villains, and so you're trying to stop him and learning more about what he's doing, what things are going on, and stuff with the symbiote storyline is starting to progress. Again, I don't want to spoil it because this game has a lot of what is happening, oh my gosh, moments that deserve to be experienced for themselves, absolutely. But I think it really relied on that way too much in the second half. So the first half of the story I liked a lot. It was definitely slower. Some of the missions, just half of the mission felt like kind of fillery stuff, and then the other half was like, oh, this is like the important thing that's going on. I feel like they could have cut down some of the mission content, not necessarily in length because the whole campaign length was perfect, but they could have, I don't know, could have built things up a little better. So this is where we're going to get into some spoiler stuff because I just have to talk about it and explain some examples. So if you haven't played the game, please skip ahead. You absolutely should go into this game blind. It's got a lot of those wow moments for sure. But if you don't care, stick along. On to spoiler territory stuff. Man, the Peter symbiote storyline, it worked so well for me until it didn't. It went so quick. I felt like we see Harry with like the whole Agent Venom kind of vibe, which was cool. And then he very quickly, I think it's like maybe in 2 missions, goes from helping Peter with doing stuff with being Agent Venom kind of symbiote vibes. And Harry's totally fine. The symbiote isn't affecting him. He feels great. And then Craven kills Peter, which I was like, I completely was blown aback by. And then, of course, I was like, oh, this is how they're going to transfer the symbiote. Cool. So then you get the symbiote transferred to Peter. And within that same mission, his like voice and mannerism already starts changing a little. Like, it was so quick. Like, and it's not like it was bad, but it was so fast, man. Like, it felt like there wasn't enough time for it to build. Because like I said, in the mission, he gets the symbiote, his voice already gets like a little raspier and a little deeper, which Yuri Lowenthal, as the voice actor, did a phenomenal job in this game because there are some really heartbreaking, intense scenes, and I loved that. And then after the mission that Peter gets the symbiote, it's like 2 missions later, he's being all you know, Bully Maguire-y. Not really. Like, it was done really well in this game. He just is angry. He's just angry and is fed up with everything, essentially. Which honestly is a very natural progression for Peter versus just being a complete and utter jerk for no reason whatsoever. He's just like, I can do this all by myself. I'm the hero, whatever, right? That was done well, but it was just done so quickly that I like didn't have time to process things. Like, and I would do side stuff in between missions, but it just still all felt so quick and so rushed. And speaking of rushed, holy frick, the final act of this game went absolutely comic book, off the walls insanity, and I did not like it. And I feel crazy because I haven't seen people talking a lot about this, and maybe it's because the game hasn't been out long and people don't want to, have spoilers, whatever, but I did not like the final act where Venom is like taking over the city, doing the whole we're gonna make everyone a symbiote thing, which I understand is comic booky, but it just came out of nowhere, man, and I did not like it at all. Fighting MJ as Scream, that was cool, I liked that. That was insane. It was a good character kind of fight between MJ and Peter and a lot of the struggles they were going with the whole game. That was cool, but then the whole city turning into like symbiotes and just the whole city turning into freaking goo was really cool visually. Like, man, was it gorgeous, but it just lost me because, like I said, the thing I like most about Spider-Man stories is this emotional character stories, which they did here because Harry is Venom, and the whole time Peter's trying to save Harry, but it just got so bogged down by the spectacle of it all, I think, and I think the intention of the story was really good to have Harry be Venom and have that personal, like, whole thing of Peter trying to save someone he loves again, sort of like with Doc Ock and like half Spider-Man villains, but it just didn't land. It got really bogged down by all of the insanity happening, and even stuff I really enjoyed, like Miles and Martin Lee teaming up, which was awesome. Going into Peter's mind to like cure him of the rest of the symbiote, then turning into the anti-venom suit, like, was really, really cool, but it just felt like it took away from so much of the core struggle of Harry trying to save Peter, that it just made those final moments of that story where Harry pretty much dies and he's now back in the hospital, it just made it kind of fall flat for me. And it seemed like the point of all of that was just setting up Norman to be like the Green Goblin, which is fine, but he's like, oh, Spider-Man ruined my son. I'm like, my guy, you're the one who gave him the symbiote? Like, I get they're trying to set up stuff, whatever. So if you felt any of this, if you felt like the emotional impact of the end didn't land as much, because of just everything getting bogged down, even though it was really cool and really, really well done. Let me know, because I just felt disappointed after beating the game. With all that said, I loved the game as a whole. The final act just really disappointed me, and it got so overwhelmed that I wasn't having as good as a time as I was in the opening hours, which again was opposite from a lot of the things I was hearing from reviews. So let me know if you finished the game, if you felt the same way. Like I said, I'm a Spider-Man fan through and through, and I love the struggle of Spider-Man and Peter Parker and Miles Morales and their personal relationships. This game, I felt like, did Miles' journey and Miles' kind of Spider-Man story infinitely better than Peter's, so at least it had that going for it. If you play the game, if you haven't, comment your thoughts. Let me know if you're excited. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the Spider-Man 3. That's not confirmed, but it's totally happening. I hope you have yourself a fantastic day.